Welcome, everyone, once again for our Friday audio Zoom events. We are so happy you're here. I'm Jan Jeremias, one of your hosts today. I'm an integrative health and wellness coach and author who works with people and pets to help them overcome health challenges and live healthier lives. And I'm really excited to be joined on stage with my co-host, collaborator, friend, and second parachute, the amazing and very kind Mary Jane McQueen. Mary Jane, go ahead.
Thank you, Jan. Yeah, so yes, I am Mary Jane. I know most of you here know that already, or MJ, as others may know me. But I am the founder of MJ McQueen Creative Studio, and I really help entrepreneurs to step into their light and share their gifts authentically. And I help them to overcome self-doubt, finding their voice, and co-creating visuals that feel aligned to their mission. And as always, I am honored to be here with all of you today, along with my beautiful friend Jan, who really does inspire me every day to shine brightly as just as she does. And yes, vice versa, my friend, you are my second parachute. So thank you, Mike, for that 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 visual. Thank you, Jan.
I'm glad I could share.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, so welcome everybody. We welcome you with open hearts to this shared space, a gentle gathering for reflection, honesty, and healing. Whether you're joining us with fresh sorrow, quiet remembrance, or simple curiosity, we're honored you're here. And today we come together for a conversation called Making Friends with Grief. And before we begin, let's take a moment to acknowledge what that word grief actually means. The word grief comes from the Old French grief and the Latin grevere, meaning to burden or make heavy. And truly, that's what grief often feels like, a heaviness, a weight we carry in our chest, our bones, our days. It arises in response to loss, yes, but also in response to change, disconnection, and the unexpected unraveling of what once felt familiar or safe. Grief is not limited to the death of a loved one, though that is often what we associate it with. We grieve many things throughout our lives: the loss of youth or the fading of health, the ending of a relationship or a dream that no longer fits, the loss of a job, a home, or a sense of belonging, the passing of a beloved pet who may have been our greatest comfort, and even the quiet, invisible losses of identity, of possibility, of who we thought we would be. Grief is an integral part of being human and of being alive. It's woven into the fabric of love and connection. If we care deeply, we grieve deeply. And yet, despite how universal it is, we often feel pressure to hide our grief, to rush through it, or to pretend we've moved on before we're ready. So today we invite you to embrace a different approach, one that doesn't pathologize, sorry, pathologize or diminish grief, but honors it. We're not here to fix it. We're here to listen to it, to sit beside it, and perhaps to understand it more fully. So as we open up this space together, know this: you do not have to be anywhere other than where you are. You do not have to carry your grief alone. You are welcome here in all your tenderness, complexity, and courage. So let us begin.
So this morning, I wanted to share a poem that I used recently on my social media. So some of you may have seen it already, but I wanted to share it today because it speaks to grief and the feeling that we are not alone. So 2 years ago, on April 24th, I lost my very first childhood friend. We were born 6 weeks apart, and he was my nephew, Jeff, and I became we became co-conspirators in such discovery and mischief, and we had such amazing adventures in childhood. And his memory is a blessing always, and I feel his presence often. So the poem is by Margaret Mead, and it reads: To the living, I am gone. To the sorrowful, I will never return. To the angry, I was cheated. But to the happy, I am at peace. And to the faithful, I have never left. I cannot speak, but I can listen. I cannot be seen, but I can be heard. So, as you stand upon a shore, gazing at a beautiful sea, as you look upon a flower and admire its simplicity, remember me. Remember me in your heart, your thoughts, and your memories of the times we loved, the times we cried, the times we fought, the times we laughed. For if you always think of me, I will never have gone. Thank you for letting me share that this morning.
Thank you, Mary Jane. It's a beautiful poem. Um, and like the just the meaning and what you shared about your cousin. Well, actually, sorry, your nephew, um, Jeff. Um, and I think that I'm always struck by this whole idea of all the things that we lose, that we grieve, that it is not limited to people or beings, um, in what might be considered, the way people think of grief and loss, that it is regarding many aspects of our lives, which we tend to, in society, ignore or belittle or downplay. And at its core, grief is about finding yourself in a time of suffering and figuring out a way to make sense of your life when nothing makes sense. And I think that comes when we have these deep things that we really do care about, and there's change, and all of a sudden there's these monumental shifts, and those could be for multitudes of different circumstances. Where you had a business and you were working on a specific venture, and all of a sudden that changes, and all of a sudden you have to navigate and kind of pivot, yet you still feel a sense of loss and sort of, I want to say, untethering, in that, who you were was so invested in what that was, that all of a sudden it's a reframing and a reestablishment and sort of like an adjustment, like a recalibration of like, who am I now? And what does this mean for me? And where am I going? And I think it's, and I can probably, that just tends to be who I am. I tend to do that quite often, get very reflective and kind of look at those situations. And I have I know that I think many of us here, we have a true investment in what we do and who we are. And not to say that it's bad, but I think there is that feeling of, unsettled feeling of questioning when things change.
Well, that's absolutely true, Jan, because I know, um, that definitely, I know I've shared that with a number of you here on when we were doing it LinkedIn audios, but it's was definitely a case for me at the end of 2019. I was restructured out of my job and I had been working there for 31 years. And so it was an integral part of, or felt like an integral part of who I was as a person. Um, because I invested so much time and energy into it. It wasn't just a job for me. It was, an actual part of who I was. And so that was a really difficult time. It was interesting. It took me a little while, with some counseling and stuff to realize it's like what I was experiencing was grief. It was like grief of the person that I thought I was, and starting to recognize the person that I really was. So, and that question kept coming around. I was like, well, who am I now? Who
Hmm.
am I now? And fortunately, I look at it as an opportunity because, I mean, a couple months later, we had a worldwide shutdown. So it was an interesting opportunity for me to expand and grow. and work through some self-development, which I know a couple of you here already are aware of this program, but just, going through that and realizing, flipping the script, as they are apt to say, seeing how this was really an opportunity for me to expand and grow and really become the person that I am underneath of it all, and being able to help the people that I want to help and work with the people I want to work with. And so I just but it was a process for sure, because there's the shock and the denial, the whole steps of grief, the whole thing. You go through the whole gamut, but recognizing that now it was a beautiful opportunity for me to do something more expansive, to do something that felt more right to my nature.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
No, absolutely. I was looking for the title of a book, and sorry that came on in the meantime. But um, yeah, I loved your share, Mary Jane. And yes, I have heard your story, and it never gets, old to me because I think it's so valuable for people to know. And so happens to so many of us where we have a particular way we identify ourselves. And all of a sudden, when things change, we start to question and we don't know who we are really. It's kind of like we have to remember. And it's a reminding to me of who we are, um, because we've forgotten. We've gotten so entrenched and so kind of like almost like hyper focused on one part of ourselves that we tend to forget all that we are. For me, I know that many of you know that it was my divorce. It was the shattering of what I thought um, was my life was going to be. Um, not as long as Mary Jane was in her job, but I was someone's partner for 15 years. And then all of a sudden it was over. And I was like, well, who am I now? And all the ways I had thought about myself and identified myself were then gone. And I had to do the same thing. I had to learn about myself again, to remember who I was and what I loved and what my values were and what was my foundation. And not in criticism of anybody else, but there are times when it is a very lonely feeling because it's very hard. I mean, as much as we try to, and I have learned, I hope through the years, um, to be a heart with ears, I heard recently, um, and to be able to listen. And I love that feeling or that image in my mind of to being a heart with ears. But at times, it's very hard for people to grasp and to understand what you're going through because they're not you. And so you have to, like, you have to be patient and loving with these people, but they don't totally understand what you're going through. And I think at times it is a very lonely feeling. The book I was looking up was actually a book I contributed to recently that came out in December called Faces of Grief, Stories of Putting the Pieces Back Together, where I talk about that, like my story, which was about divorce, but this is just 30 different experiences of different types of loss, from losing people to mental illness, who are living but are not who they were, to incarceration, to adoption, and all that comes with that. So miscarriage, so all these different circumstances where people experience loss and society is really not prepared to deal with these types of loss or to address them. Society is very used to kind of lumping together that loss has to do with a person only. And even around pets, it's kind of like lacking big time. People don't totally understand that bond between animal and caretaker or human. Um, People tend to not know what to say, so they say really inappropriate things, which happens. I remember, when my first dog passed and people saying to me, well, don't worry, you can get another dog. Like it was so easy to replace her. I mean, she was my lifeline for 19 years, and so all of a sudden it's like, really? Like I can just get another one. Or, even just like, in ends of friendships or collaborations where there is this feeling of a loss. If you were invested in it, if your heart was invested in it, there is a sense of grief. That's what I now know. And I'm not saying I know a lot, but that I know.
It's so true, Jen. It's like that often, people do, yes, I like that, Darlene, a loss is a loss. And anyway, it's absolutely true. It took me a while to come to terms with that because when I was working through my grief about my job and my career as it had been thus far, um, it took me a while to recognize the steps until it was pointed out to me that it's like you do recognize what this is that you're going through, and it's like all of a sudden I realized, oh, I'm grieving. I'm grieving that version of Mary Jane that I thought was the only me. It only to recognize now that that's not the case. There's much more. So beware, world. Here I come. But yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes people do say very interesting things, but it's almost the assumption of what you're not over it yet. Um,
Well,
Especially when it comes to a job.
I mean,
They're like,
you
"What,
know,
you're not over it yet?"
I can't even tell you how many people said that to me when I got divorced. You're still like what they would call wallowing or ruminating. And I
Hmm.
was just like, it was just like, I couldn't. And then what happens is you don't share it with anybody. Then you shut down because you
That's
don't want
right.
you either pretend everything's okay or you say, or it's not okay and you still don't share it because those words like in your head of like, because I mean, what do we do as human beings? We tend to look at ourselves then as there must be something wrong with us
Hmm.
because we're not over this yet.
Yeah, what's wrong with me? Why am I not done with this?
Why am I not done? I should be able to check a box off a list, like with our to-do lists and our to-do
Yes,
lists. I'm just over this already.
exactly. But
And I think the one thing for our topic, and I'd love to hear what Darlene has to say, is this whole idea of making friends with grief. And I think it took me a long time to realize that to some extent, I will never be over it. It is part of who I am. It
mm,
is woven into the tapestry of now Jan.
yes.
And it has then becomes a different part of myself. It becomes a different way in which I share, in which I feel. I'm a different person in many good ways,
Mm,
a lot of good ways now. I'm so much more empathetic. I think I understand people in heartbreak and like heartbreak meaning like just, you invest your heart and then all of a sudden that investment is gone. And you can heartbreak over a project that failed. But I mean that, and I'm so much more present. And as you were talking, Mary Jane, because my father got laid off, got let go when he was probably in his mid to late 50s. He had worked for the same company for 35 years. He was an aerospace engineer and he was literally came in one day. They were all in this big, big, like auditorium. And basically, they were told, and he had like an hour to clear out his desk. I mean, it was horrible. And he was devastated. And I think he did have this whole identity crisis of like who he was. He was very identified. He had worked in the same place with the same people. And I don't know that I truly got it until like much more recently as I've worked in this sort of like grief and loss quite a bit over the last few years. I mean, I understood it, but I think now I understood it, stand it on so much more of a deeper level. And that's, think, age and wisdom, I hope. and, and in a way, it makes me a little sad because I feel like I don't know if I was there enough for him during that. I mean, it was a long time ago. I mean, you know, I was fairly young when that happened. But I think now I look back and I realize how hard that was for him.
exactly. Exactly. So true. So, Divine, what pearls of wisdom do you have today?
Oh my goodness. Hello, my loves. Hello, everybody. Hope you guys have a beautiful Friday weekend. Wow, talking about grief and you guys always take me down a rabbit hole, and now I'm really like feeling all of the grief. Okay, I'll get to that in a minute, but hold on. So the rabbit hole, right? I'm thinking about the word grief, and I think about these three words. I think about gravity, grave, and gratitude. Wow. Gravity, grave, and gratitude. I'm thinking about heavy, heavy burdens. Hmm. For some reason, I want to say heavenly burdens. Because a lot of times when we are grieving something, it becomes heavy before it comes light. Thank you, Spirit. It becomes heavy before it becomes light when we are grieving something, someone, so um, even heavy burdens, meaning the load, the weight, or the charge, right? The charges that have been put upon us, the charge or the energy that we have gave to something or someone. Like Jan was saying, like the commitment, the heart of the charge of the heart, right? You charge the heart to the game, you know? And when we give, or what was given towards us, sometimes people put unnecessary injustices upon us. Some people are grieving being bullied. Some people are grieving being talked about, being lied on, whatever, right? Because other people's perceptions of them. So there's a lot of injustices that people are also grieving. And also, when I'm thinking about that too, I think about the energy or the charge that we were born or carried, right? Because grief is also what you're born into, what you have been carrying because of what you've been born into. This goes to epigenetics. Think about the DNA, our ancestors' grief. A lot of people don't understand that we grieve our ancestors. I'm still grieving my father's pain. I'm still grieving my mother's pain, my grandmothers, the matriarchs in my family, and I may not understand what they have experienced because I didn't live it, but it was in the DNA and the epigenetics. So it's still carried and it transferred through me, through my mother's umbilical cord, DNA, epigenetics, bloodline, So sometimes when we're grieving, the body expresses grief, sometimes not knowing or understanding the why. Like, why am I feeling emotional? Like when you guys were talking about grief, when you were talking about, when we talk about our dad, Jan, a lot, when we talk about our pets, I started to feel all of that because I'm an emotional empath. I'm empathetic, right? I'm an empath. Let me get my words right. I am an empathetic energy feeler. So what I'm saying is that the body expresses grief and sometimes not knowing or understanding why, right? But beings that I know that I am an empathetic energy feeler, I don't need to understand, oh, what happened? Why did that happen? I don't need to solve it all the time. A lot of times we just need to learn how to feel that emotion, right? Because when we have an emotional charge towards an investment, towards something or someone, we have to feel it. And sometimes we may understand it and sometimes we may not. A lot of the tears I've cried, I promise you, they weren't my own, right? So it's like feel it and allow yourself to feel it and know that the emotional investment has to be returned with gratitude, right? Gratitude for the experience, gratitude for the lesson, gratitude for the love, whatever it may be. I remember when I was grieving my father, I just gave him gratitude for everything that he could and have done for me, not thinking about, well, maybe if you did this, maybe if you did that. No, there's no what ifs or maybes. You did your best, and I appreciate you, and I give gratitude for that experience with you because I love you and I appreciate you, right? So it's like giving gratitude for the old aspects of myself, where I was told to be a certain way, or I was told to shut up, or you can't do that, you can't say that, you're weird, all these things. It's like accepting and giving gratitude. And when we accept and give gratitude, we allow the emotional heavy weight, the burden to release out of the body. And I have been doing a lot of energy releasing out of my body because the pain body carries a lot of emotions. And a lot of times, like I said, we don't know a lot of the grief and where it stems from and where it came from. But we must feel it and we must release it. We must be okay with having that emotional release, right? Because a lot of us are taught not to be in our feelings, not to be in our emotions. And those are valuable and energy must flow. So this conversation, I was getting emotional, but I'm okay now. But I love this and thank you so much, loves. And I'll land it there.
Well, thank you, Divine. I have like so many comments, so many things I could say to that. So a few things that came to mind. So first, yes, our body does know grief. Our body holds grief. Um, we have certain parts of the body which are known as like organs of grief, or loss. I was just in texting earlier with a friend of mine who just broke up with her partner, and she was complaining to me that she's having a lot of sinus issues and everything. And I said, in traditional Chinese medicine, sinuses and lungs are grief, so in a way, it does not, no, things like that never surprise me, that the body does have its own way of dealing with emotional things for us. Um, and to rid our body or to rid that feeling, we also have to sort of heal that part of the physical body. In addition, the other thing that came to mind, and that was really, my path forward became my path through yoga. And that was because at times when I could not express in words what I was feeling, I could process them through my body. I was then able, so I would move and they would like, it was like I was digesting or processing people think of physical digestion. We have to digest also emotions. And so it was a way for me to process it. And then I had the ability to articulate it. I could then express it, but it gave me an avenue, a way by which to move those emotions through, for me to process them, make sense of them for myself, so that I was able to articulate it and better understand and communicate it to others to help people. I mean, that's really when you talk about, you know, to me that's the one of the gifts is taking what you've been through and sharing your story or your experiences, so maybe it impacts someone else. And as you were last thing, Divine, and then I would love to hear from Austin, was this feeling of, you said gratitude. Yes, and I love that whole idea of grief and grave, and it was beautiful. Um, but what goes with gratitude to me was also, when you mentioned it, was the word forgiveness. And I think, I know that when I went through my divorce, it took me a long time to be able to forgive myself for all the mistakes I had made, all the things that I now saw that at the time I couldn't see, but was this whole idea of forgiveness. And so, with gratitude for the person I became, I also had to learn how to forgive myself for the things that I thought, quote unquote, that I had done wrong. And with different people, or the things they could or could not do. And then you just start to look at people as human beings. You know, there are aspects of my father that, some like, did I wish he was in some way different? Yeah, but that wasn't him. And that was okay. That was more than okay. That was wonderful. So, Austin?
Thank you. Um, wow, what a subject. Um, One thing I love that Divine mentioned was, feel it to heal it. And this brings, and I love that you then compounded with the forgiveness. Um, you know, when in my very earlier years, I'll throw out two terms here, disconnection and disassociation. So let's say for at least the first 12 years of my life, I very much so normalized disconnecting from loss and traumas and just overall situations that were going on. And this became then like a defense mechanism. And what I in more recent years started to realize, like through somatic breath work specifically, was this disconnecting, which was once a defense mechanism for a lot of the things that I was dealing with and were placed in my journey, almost closed the door of allowing a processing, allowing it to get to a grieve, stage. And earlier, Jan, you also mentioned about like people have a tendency to then close off and not want to share. So I'm going to take this to just a specific example with my godfather, who, when I was 12, he experienced a stroke in front of me while I was babysitting his two biological children, and that was the last that I had seen him. And I remember it so clearly because I was very confused of how I was feeling inside and why my brain kind of was not matching. So this was that disconnect. And I really disassociated moving forward from anything related to grief. And not that long ago, he actually visited me in one of my dreams, and I made a video about it called Godfather Cake. And what came up was two things: appreciation and forgiveness. And it was like this newfound way of allowing myself to feel it um, in I'd say, a healthy way. And it almost gave me permission to feel worthy because for so long, I didn't feel that I was allowed to even share this experience with anybody else because, he wasn't my father, so to speak, but he was I was adopted, by the way. So his two children, they became my brother and sister, even though they're biologically my cousins. Long story short, um, he came and visited, and it was a new way for me to realize that this association was now crumbling back, and I was actually having this opportunity to reconnect with a part of myself, a part of him, and really feel it. And I'm just so grateful that it appeared in this kind of way because there have been times, which is why it became a defense mechanism, where it was so painful that the body, went not to flight, not to fight, but into freeze. And some of the things like I have trouble remembering. And then I'll end this with a more positive note. One thing I've learned about love in my journey also is love can sometimes be associated with grief. Um, for instance, when I think of certain people in my life that I have such a deep love for, and if I time jump to a future event, I almost grieve that experience. And that to me lets me know, even if I don't share it, how that I have such a deep appreciation. So thank you for all for your shares. And yeah, I'm complete.
Thank you so much, Austin, for sharing. And I love that if you go to a time when they're not there and, if you felt it and you were so connected to them with the heart, there is a grieving. And I think that that's, as we're sharing, that's so true for anything. And one of the things you said, which reminded me of, and I don't know, this just triggered for me, um, a memory. When someone passes in Judaism, we sit Shiva. Shiva is 7. We sit for 7 days. Um, and then there's a month, 30 days of mourning, specific kind of things you can and cannot do. And then you have a year, a full year of mourning where people do, like, depending on how observant you are, people don't listen to music, they don't go to parties, they don't buy new clothing. And the rules are different for a child than a parent, like a spouse. I had to do different things when my father passed than my mother had to do. And the rituals, I never had a true appreciation for them at all. Like, I kind of didn't understand them until I sat Shiva for my father. And then all of a sudden, like, I understood why and the meaning behind why you do it and the respect that's shown. But one of the things that happens is the first day when someone passes, you tear a piece of clothing that you wear with a razor blade. And then you wear that same clothing for that entire week. Okay, so you don't change. You also don't shower. I mean, there are a lot of kind of rules. And that being my father's child, sorry, I'm getting emotional. Um, we tear by the heart. So on the left side where the heart is. And as my mother for a spouse tears on the right, because there was nothing like that child parent bond. And that as a spouse, it's different. It's a relationship you chose, even though, whether you might say it's not chosen, that's divinely chosen, but you know what I mean. It's not, you're not born of it. And so, yeah, I just wanted to share that. It's a beautiful, beautiful, they're beautiful, beautiful rituals. And I would not have given it up by any means. Um, and it's a weird feeling when it ends. Um, there's a whole tradition about when you walk out of a Shiva house after you've been after you walk out of the house after the first time, because you don't leave really for that week. When you walk out for the first time, there's like a whole like sort of re-entry into the world. Um, and so yeah, just thought I would share that a little bit.
That's it's so beautiful, Jan. And yes, having experienced that as well, having dual household as I do, but I really felt that the first really strong experience I had that was with my father-in-law, sitting Shiva for my father-in-law. So it was quite an interesting experience for me. And I know it's a little bit different too because of the traditions. I am not really considered to be one of the grievers, but regardless of that, I my heart grieved anyway. So but I love that the there's reasons why these things were put into to place as well, and it's really important for. I think the lesson of what Austin was speaking to and all so far is really just instead of pushing the grief away, is as our topic is making friends with grief, to sit beside it and listen and allow it to soften us rather than harden our hearts. Because sometimes, as Austin was speaking to, um, we can sometimes it's a way of us, closing off from grief, because we sometimes we don't know how to deal with the pain that comes along. But making a friend and no matter what its source, because as divinely speaking, sometimes it can come from past that wasn't even ours. But just and I liked how Jan you were saying earlier about heart with ears. 'Cause that's so true. Um, sometimes we're very good at listening to others, and that's very important. Sometimes it's not a matter of speaking, it's a matter of listening to those that are grieving, whatever that loss is, and just letting them know that you're there.
Hmm.
You don't have to have the answer for everything. So I don't have the answers to everything in my own life, so I wouldn't I wouldn't even assume that I have all the answers for everybody, but just saying I'm here
Hmm.
and offering them a hand or a listening ear or heart with ears, as you called it. But yeah, and being compassionate to ourselves and understanding, sometimes we're operating with the knowledge that we have at the time, and as we learn and grow and we experience life, we might approach it differently. But just being there and making friends with it, not moving on, just holding its hand. That's the way I like the visual for that, holding its hand, holding grief's hand. So
So do I, Mary Jane. And one of the things as you were talking, and then I'd love to hear what Darlene has to say. And I think Mike had his hands raised at one point.
he
So
did.
yeah. So, but is literally holding hands and to realize that I think with the passing of my father and and it was a beautiful experience. And, I have his picture out. I say hello to him every day. It sits on my counter in my kitchen because I want to see it. Like I want him there with me. And but is this feeling of realizing that it is forever in you and forever has changed you and not expecting it to go. I think that was a big thing for me is the realization that I could not go back to the person that I once was. Like that was not possible with my divorce and with the passing of my dad. Like I'm not the same person. And that there are points when you it was the first time in my life where I understood where you can carry joy and sadness at the same time. That when I remember my father, I remember things that he did or things that he said, and I remember a smile, and that brings like a smile to my face and such joy, but it also brings like some sadness too, the fact that he is not here. And I think it was the first time that I actually really understood that idea, or that sort of presence of being happy and sad and joyful and sad at the same time. It was like, oh my gosh. Like, I think in my brain, in my very analytical scientific brain, I always thought like you were either one or the other. I was either happy or sad. And to really be able to hold space for both and to realize that it is not going anywhere. And that if you have a bad day, or if I have a bad day, and one day I'm very emotional because all of a sudden I miss him a lot, that's okay. It's not a permanent setback. It's not something that's wrong. It's just a part of remembering and keeping him alive for me, or whatever that situation was. So, Darlene?
Oh my goodness. I've been taking lots of deep breaths while everybody has been sharing. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I have experienced grief in a multitude of ways ever since I was young. My very first opportunity to really be in it, and I say opportunity because it's left me with a sense of compassion for the world and those around me in a way that I don't think would have happened had I not have experienced everything. But my first opportunity to attend and feel that was when my best friend passed when we were 7. And at the time, trying to understand it and understand the reality that she's not going to be there was so difficult. I lost my parents both. I'm now at the point with my parents where I've almost been without them longer than I've been with them. And grief there. And, it's funny as I recall like my life and all the different ways, grief from a job that was lost just a couple of years ago, grief and trying to reinvent and understand where I'm at in this world. And that loss that gave me, I can remember when I was younger, I went to more funerals than I did anything else. My parents were older than most of my friends' parents. They were around the ages of my friends' grandparents. And so I was in that world of loss and losing and just seeing the shifts that happen with grief of all the way around. But it made me who I am today. It's allowed me to step in this place where I can take all of that, I can reflect on it, and I can, exactly what you're saying, Jan, I can be happy and I can be sad all in the same moment. And I'm thinking particularly about an experience just recently. My son got married in October of last year. And oh my goodness, what my whole being wouldn't have given to have my parents there in their physical presence. But my goodness, what an opportunity to really embrace that with my heart and with my soul and realize that they've never really left me. And that through everything that I've been through and everything that I've allowed in, and the openness and the softness and the energy of others that I take and respect and honor, what a beautiful moment has been created in this moment. And I think grief is such a hard conversation to have with some people because we are so shut down to it, and we don't. It's taboo to talk about. It's not, for a lot of people, just so difficult. And I am just so appreciative and grateful for this conversation today, for all the sharing that everybody has allowed into this space, because it is so important to acknowledge and recognize that our grief is a part of us, and that compassion for understanding that it doesn't matter how big or how small, or whether it's a person or a job or whatever the case may be, it lives in our bodies as well too. And how can we move through it, be with it, appreciate it, acknowledge it, and have conversations about it so that it can soften and lighten. I love what Divine you said, or I think it was Jan, I don't remember now, but that shift from the heaviness to the lightness, and doing that together in community so we don't feel we have to carry that all on our own either. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Darlene. And I do think it is so important to have these conversations, to have people be open and be willing to share experiences, circumstances. I think we make it more normal, and I use that word in quotes, more normal to share these experiences. And from the sharing of our own stories, of our stories, we allow others to share theirs, right? And one of the things you said, Darlene, on a practical, sort of practical level with your son getting married, and well, in Judaism, in Eastern European descent, you name after someone who's passed. You never name after someone who's still alive. And so my brother's most recent grandchild, a little boy, was named after my father. And, in that, which is beautiful, and the fact that, his name now lives on, but also that tinge of sadness. It was like I was really happy because it was such an honor. And he was the second grandson born after my father passed. And it is customary and everything, but still there was this kind of finality about it, that even though I know he's not like physically here, all of a sudden it was like, oh, he's really not here. And so my father's name, well, in Hebrew was Tzvi, which means deer, like the animal, the deer. And I've always had a special bond with deers, with deers. I don't know if you say deers or deer as a plural, but yeah. So the new baby, well, he's now a year, but his name is Tzvi, after my dad. So there is very fond love for that. But I think that it's so true. I think that, there are circumstances and situations, and I think it has become so customary for us to kind of go and push all those emotions and put them in a box and hide them. And I would say, don't hide them, do something with them. I mean, use them as fuel um, to help you move forward or to make change in yourself and in the life of someone else. And I know, I know most of you here, or all of you here, and I know that you're all doing that. Kimberly?
Good morning, everyone. Wow. What a beautiful conversation on such a well, which can be a heavy topic. I I wrote down three words as I was listening. I wrote down capacity, grace, and compassion as I was listening. And just to go back to what Divine was sharing in regards to um, grief specifically, because that's the topic um, being explored, how it lives in our bodies, not just live in our bodies, but it flows through our blood, right? Um, it's in our cells. It's it's there. Everything comes from a place. And in terms of our ancestry, some of us are carrying grief from family members that we haven't even met. Capacity, grace, compassion, everything, it comes from a place. But then we're on the physical, earth. We're on this physical earth. We have experiences like we're talking about today. And there's a certain responsibility, right? We talk about self-care often. And what does it really truly mean to care for yourself? Well, we're talking about that today, right? We're talking about, you know, grief. What is it? What does it mean to us, for us? What are some actual examples of experiences that we've had? And how is it that we can move this through our body? Because neuroscience um, tells us that grief is processed in the amygdala, in the hippocampus, in the brainstem, right? And this this idea of processing these feelings, and for some reason I'm thinking, I'm visualizing blood, right? Like the blood in my body, and like grief just flowing through that, flowing through the body, right? And, there's that excretion process. We can talk about the excretion process through, creative expression, like Mary Jane so eloquently shared her poetry. Really, how each and every one of us have used our words to express ourselves, which is essentially our words are a creative expression. Physical activities like Jan guiding individuals, humans through yoga, the process of yoga, mindfulness, all different journaling, different ways that we can excrete grief through our body, process it out of the amygdala, move it from that physical experience and move it, excrete it out of the body. I was just thinking about, as I wrote those words down, capacity, grace, compassion. And so I was listening to Jan's experience with her father, um, with grief, the relationship to grief. I was thinking about my relationship with my father. So different. So different. A lot of grief there. Going through, though, because I've had a lot of processing time, right? A lot of time to process and really understand that there was a greater reason behind those experiences, right? And understanding that once I really understood the experience for what it really helped me to translate that energy into the work they continue to do. It's a very powerful experience. Um, Mary Jane, Jan, talking about something that so many of us are living life and have yet not the awareness to really understand what grief is, and that we experience it. And what does it mean for us? And how are we going to excrete it? So thank you. Thank you for this lovely space.
Thank you, Kimberly, for sharing. How are we going to basically express it? What are we going to do? Like, not, but how are we going to integrate it and then create from it? Mary Jane?
Yeah, it's such so beautiful, and yeah, it's just you know, somehow recognizing grief and all its capacities. And Dan, I hope it's okay if I say that um, we have a wonderful opportunity to experience something today. And is it okay if I introduce Mike? Because we,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
Mike.
I reached out to Mike earlier in the week, and asked him if he had a song on grief. And Mike is a wonderful song creator. And so we wanted to invite him up to share the story. Mary Jane, also, please, I'll shut up now.
No, absolutely not. There is no shutting up. It's, yeah, we just invite you, Mike, now if you want to share a little bit about your process with grief and the meaning behind what you're going to share with us today. And he's beautiful, beautiful share. So um, please feel free.
Thank you, MJ. Thank you, Jan. So I spent 10 years as a special operations Army combat medic. I deployed overseas multiple times. I've experienced grief in many ways, and I really don't want to say much more about it outside of my music. I've been writing for over 50 years. I've been playing music for over 50 years. Doesn't mean it's any good, but this is something that I'm really honored to be able to share with everybody here. And I'll give you a warning. If you find yourself in tears, there's a secret. Breathe through your mouth, because that's going to help center you. Kimberly, I heard you do the same thing, but it's a way that you can center and stay in that moment so you can unpack it. So just give me a verbal if you can hear this, okay? Starting it now.
Yeah. Thank you.
Being human is living in a guest house. Each morning grief may knock, carrying its wild, heavy arms, and yet we open the door. Before you know what kindness truly is, you must lose things, must feel the absence, and hollow your hands. Must wake to the weightless ache of silent longing. It is not the weight you carry, but how you carry it. Like a stone or a seed, asks only that you walk on, even when bent low. Do not stand at my grave and weep, for I am not there. I am the hush in the trees. praise this fractured world, still bearing strawberries, still pouring morning wine, still offering the small stubborn blessings woven through the tatters of sorrow. When great souls die, peace does not rush in. It blooms slowly, tenderly, with the patience of wild things. Let us agree for now that breaking does not make us stronger. It makes us truer, more luminous, fiercely and beautifully alive. So open the door again tomorrow. Let grief enter as it must. But know you are not its prisoner. You are its honored, growing guest, who one day will walk out carrying only light.
Thank you for letting me share.
That was absolutely amazing, Mike, and thank you so much for honoring us with sharing your beautiful gift here. I know you don't always see it that way, but we definitely see it that way. We are truly blessed to have had you be with us this morning and sharing your precious gift. So thank you.
I'm honored. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike.
So honored, Mike. Thank you to have you here and to also share your beautiful light with us. Really an honor. I've listened to the song now multiple times throughout the week, and just each time am so moved, and definitely sums up for me this whole process and this whole experience of grief. And when I say experience, because it involves all of ourselves, mind, body, spirit, all our senses. So we're going to move into our meditation right now. So find a comfortable seat or place to rest, letting your body be supported by the earth beneath you, by your seat. Close your eyes if you like, or gently soften your gaze. And take a few easy, deep breaths. Inhale and exhale. Feel the rhythm of your own breath, like the natural sway of the breeze across the fields. Grief is like a seed planted deep in the soil, buried in the cool, shaded places where the light feels distant. In these murky depths, it is easy to feel lost, heavy, unseen. Allow yourself to acknowledge this place within yourself. There is no shame here. It is a part of the sacred cycle of life. Breathe into it. Breathe into the not knowing, the aching, the quiet. Now imagine, even in the shaded forest where sunlight barely trickles through, life is abundant. Moss carpets the ground in soft greens. Delicate flowers bloom in the undergrowth. Ancient trees reach skyward with strong, steady trunks, nourished by deep roots in the unseen soil. In the stillness and the shadow, growth does not stop. It becomes wiser, more patient, more enduring. Just as the forest thrives in the shade, so too does your heart find ways to heal and grow, even when you cannot see it, even when it is not obvious. Feel the quiet life stirring inside of you. Now, as you continue to breathe, sense the gentle reaching upward, the seedling pushing through the soil, the flower turning toward the distant sun, the soul leaning into hope. And from the rich, dark soil of grief, we stretch toward the vast sky of perspective, toward new beginnings, toward tender dreams. Yet we don't have to live only in the deep shadow or the bright heights. We are invited to dwell in the middle way, where roots run deep and branches sway freely, where grief and joy, loss and love dance together. Here in the middle is the steadiness of being, the peace of presence, the quiet resilience of that blooms even in shade. Breathe here. Breathe into the steadiness of your own heart. Breathe into knowing that you are growing, even when you feel still. Affirm softly, silently, or aloud. I honor the depth of my grief. I trust the quiet growth within me. I welcome the steady blossoming of my soul. Rest for a few more moments, held by the rich earth, cradled by the wide sky, surrounded by the silent flourishing of all that grows, seen and unseen. When you are ready, feel free to gently open your eyes. Return to this space with tenderness, carrying your strength, your sorrow, and all that is. Like a flower carrying both rain and sun in its petals. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen.
That was beautiful, Jen. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Please connect with us. We'd love to have a conversation about this or anything else. Our next workshop together, Mary Jane and I, is Saturday, May 24th at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Blooming in a Garden of Joy, Cultivating Love, Peace, and Kindness. We would love to have you for this or for something else. Feel free to share, anything in the comment section. I've recorded the meditation separately in addition to our normal recording for this conversation, which will be on our Spirit Born Imaginings YouTube channel. So I'm going to pop that in. So if you think it might be helpful, either of these conversations, please share them with others, just so we can a ripple of impact that we can have. Have a great week, everybody.
Yes, many blessings, everyone, and thank you for sharing your vulnerable hearts with us. And we wish you many, many, many blessings ahead for the weekend.
Absolutely. I mean, if you happen to be local to me in Connecticut, in the US, I am actually doing 4 meditations tomorrow for a grief fair, helping people who are in the throes of grief and loss. So if you know anybody in the area, feel free to pop me a message and I'll share the details with you. Run by a wonderful woman whose company is called The Quietest House. So that's tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
Thank you all.
Have a great day. Many blessings to you all. Love you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Mary Jane.
Thank
And
you.
have a great week.
You
Take care,
too.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.